Charlie, let us know if we need to mute ourselves too if there gets too much background noise. I'm in our basement, but it might get loud, so just let me know.
Okay, will do. All right, let's see if I can. Hello, everyone. If you guys are in the chat, can you let us know where you're from? Give a few minutes for people to show up. Hi, Angela from Seattle. My brother says hello from Buffalo. Got Azaria from Indiana. Got another one from Buffalo. Hi, Joanne. From Kentucky. Awesome. Just to remind everybody, there's a little bit of a delay on a stream, so we won't see the chat. Or you won't hear our answer right away if we answer a question. Oh, great. It printed on two sides of the paper. That's never good. Got Long Beach, California. Cool. And if you guys own a juice business, why don't you let us know how long you've owned your juice business for, and maybe the name of the company. Got one from Ontario, Canada, right up the street from Buffalo. It's funny, everyone at Goodnature is posting all the pictures of all the snow in Buffalo right now. All right, so I think we can go ahead and get started. All right, what's up, my juice lovers? I have to do that or everybody gets mad. Welcome to the first ever free juicing level up session where juice business owners come to level up their business. Open to anyone who owns a juice business or think about starting one in the future and wants to come and learn as much as they can. Hosted by myself, Charlie Wettlaufer, who I am a second generation of Goodnature. My dad started it in 1976 when he invented what is now the industry standard commercial cold press juicer. And I run it with my brother Eric, and we sell to thousands of juice businesses all over the world every year. And then we have Chef Ari Sexner on the line. Say hi, Chef.
How's it going, everyone?
So Chef Ari has been working with us for over 10 years now. He's the #1 juice business consultant in the world, has consulted for hundreds of juice companies, whether it's recipes or dealing with the health department or front of house stuff. He can do it all. He's also the author of the only juicing book that teaches you how to make your own recipes, called The Juicing Companion. I'm sure many of you have purchased it and love it like I do. And we have a couple of special guests today. Kiley Rupp, do you say Rupp or Rupp?
Rupp.
Rupp, Kiley Rupp, owner of Body and Soul in Hays, Kansas, which is a spa wellness studio and juice business. And so you use an X1 in your business, right?
Correct.
Yes, and then we have Emry Wooten, owner of Maui Juice Co. in Hawaii, who's been running a very successful juice bar for many, many years. Welcome, everybody.
Aloha. Thanks, everybody, for coming. It's going to be exciting.
Yes, it sure is. So I can go over the agenda real quick while people are joining here and a couple notes about the stream, and then we can get started. So Ari's going to be doing a little demo for us and going over some juicing basics for commercial juice businesses. So how to juice like the pros, basically. weighing and washing produce, chilling produce the night before, whether to mix produce while you're juicing or juice things separately, how to grind effectively, pressing, and some tips on pressing, and chilling your juice right away and why that's important. And then finally, bottling juice. So he'll go through a demo. Everyone's free to pop in and answer questions and ask questions while he's doing it. I've got my laptop here and I'm kind of monitoring everything. So if I don't see your question right away, I will try to get to it. And the chat is open. However, you do have to be subscribed to the channel to ask a question. So just hit that subscribe button if you're not yet. And also just note that all streams have a slight delay. So we'll talk and then you'll hear it a couple minutes later. So there may seem like we're not seeing your question right away, but just give it some time. And just as a technical note, this is our first time doing a live stream like this. So if we run into technical issues, I apologize. There's a lot that goes into this. There's microphones and cameras and Wi-Fi and streaming software. So it's a lot. So I apologize ahead of time if we run into any issues. And I also just wanted to give a quick background of why we're doing this. So when I started working for Goodnature full-time about 11 years ago, the first thing I noticed is very apparent that a lot of our customers that are buying these expensive commercial machines and running businesses had a lot of questions. A lot of people are struggling with the same types of issues. And back then there was no content out there. There wasn't anybody on YouTube. There wasn't anybody doing courses or blogs. So that's when I started the commercial juicing blog back in 2014, where I was just writing articles answering people's basic questions. And then shortly after that, Ari came on board to help from a more professional level, since he has real experience as a classically trained chef and working in restaurants and dealing with the health department. And he actually created the first organic certified juice company in Las Vegas for the Bellagio Hotel. So we started working together and we've been helping customers grow their company over the last 10 years. And over the years, we've also done some events like JuiceCon and our online juicing courses. And we did a paid juicing level up program. And we experimented with some live in-person hands-on sessions at juice bars. But all of those were ticketed events and were quite expensive because they cost a lot of money to put on. And most of them involved travel too. So although it was fun and we were educating people, and we probably will continue to do those events, I felt like we're limiting the exposure and how many people we're helping. So we finally decided just to make Level Up free for everybody. We used to charge $300 a month for this, and now we're just going to do it free. We have over 380 people registered for this event. We'll see how many join us live. And I just think, as one of our core values at Goodnature is being cultivating community, I felt like those events we're doing are great, but how can we cultivate community the most? And that's by giving free content to as many people as possible. And with the internet and YouTube, we can really reach a lot of people this way. So I'm really excited to get this going. We do plan on doing it monthly. It probably won't be on a set schedule just because Ari and I are quite busy and he travels a lot for consulting and everything. So, but we will, if you just put yourself on the email list, we'll make sure to send out an email when we're planning the next one. So with that, I think we can get started. Let's just see where everybody's coming from. We have Illinois, Louisville, Kentucky, Myrtle Beach, Oklahoma City, Southern California. Thank you everybody for joining so far. This is really exciting. And again, as Ari goes through his demo here, feel free to pop questions in the chat. And then also Kiley and Emry are here as current juice bar owners of very good, solid juice businesses to help answer questions for everybody. And if you're an experienced juice bar owner, don't be afraid to give advice as well when people ask questions. So Ari, do you kind of want to take over from here?
Yeah, for sure. So kind of expand on what Charlie was saying is when you open an operation, you have so many different expertises that you need, like build out, design, marketing, kitchen, and it's very easy to kind of copy or emulate what someone else is doing. And a lot of times you don't have the opportunity to talk to other juice bar owners. So this is an amazing opportunity. I hope you guys take advantage of it. But what I wanted to focus on is definitely the juicing basics. So the way I'd like to expand on that is really describe what is happening on each step of the process. So when you start out, you might have just copied on, okay, this is the juicing basics, this is standard, this is how I typically do it. But I want to expand on how that directly affects the end product. So I'm going to go through a pretty standard recipe, and I'm going to go through each step and what I would recommend doing during that process. Now, every one of these steps that I share with you might not work for your operation, but I think it's definitely key to understand why we're doing it, and implementing as many as possible as we go will have an amazing result for your operation. What I'm going to go through is the first step on the juicing process is you want to weigh and wash your produce. Okay. The first key element of that is to weigh your produce before you actually wash it. And that's really important. I get a question a lot. As soon as I get produce, do I need to wash it right away? A lot of time it gets a protective coating. So washing it too early will actually go ahead and, let me see if I'm still.
All right, we're still here. I just hit us from the stream, so you could go full screen for everybody.
Okay, no, I thought everyone left me and I was talking to myself again. Okay, so I'll go back to that. I'll ignore the screen. So the key element is not washing your produce too early. It has a protective film on it in a lot of cases. So washing it, it'll actually speed up the process of it actually turning brown and moldy. So I always like to weigh the produce initially before I wash it. And that also helps with costing the recipes, because you'll actually get an accurate weight before you peel it, and you could actually cost it correctly. So I'll typically go ahead and take my produce, weigh it out on a scale, and then I will go through the washing process. So from here, this produce has been weighed already. This is for one recipe. I went ahead and I washed it, and I like doing this the day before. It's extremely valuable if you can wash your produce the day before you actually juice. There's a number of reasons for that. Number one is when you wash the produce, hopefully you only need to wash it with cold running water, but I recommend using a secondary step like an antimicrobial wash. And that way it actually removes that film from it. And you do it the night before, and it will actually air dry in the cooler. So you're not getting any of that product in the end result. Another reason for that is with a cold press process, a true cold press process, it's not actually adding any heat to the end juice. So if you put cold produce in and you juice it, the juice is going to be much cooler. Okay. And that's extremely important. Some places will actually work in a refrigerated room, and you have 4 hours to bring the juice down below 41 degrees Fahrenheit to be out of that temperature danger zone. But if it's taking you 4 hours, I would definitely recommend revisiting that, because if you have cold produce, putting it in, it might even come out below 41 degrees. So the quicker you get it out of that temperature danger zone, the better product, the longer shelf life you'll have, and a better product you'll have. So now I got the produce here. As soon as it's washed, I need to treat it as it's ready to eat product. So I'm going to go ahead and use gloves for this. One other reason I like to weigh the produce, wash it and store it in the cooler the night before I actually juice, is it also gives me a little bit of time in case I'm short on certain products. Say I'm short 20 pounds of carrots or apples or anything. It gives me until the next day to actually secure that produce. So it actually helps out with keeping inventory correct. Now, you'll notice a lot of product I don't cut before I wash it. I cut it right before I actually juice. And that's important, especially with products like apples. If I cut it too early, it'll begin to oxidize. Or certain products like citrus or other produce, after you go ahead and you cut it and you leave it in a cooler, it'll actually start drying it out from the cooler. So it's important not to cut your produce too early if it either oxidizes or it could dry out in a cooler. So I have my recipe here. It's going to be a simple recipe. I'm using Fuji apples, Granny Smith apples, a little bit of pear, ginger, and turmeric, and a little bit of lemon. Something you want to think about when you have certain products like carrots and beets especially, is they have this end nub, and a lot of times it's extremely difficult to clean. So I go ahead and I'll cut those ends off so that that doesn't end up in the juice. Another thing you want to think about is if you have very small carrots, like these are good sized juicing carrots. If you have really small beets or carrots and you're not actually peeling that, it will actually change the color and flavor of juice because a lot of that peel is actually getting an end result. So try to get actual larger beets and carrots, and that'll actually give you a better quality juice as well. So my final cuts for this product will be I quarter the citrus and place it directly in the press. And the apples, I like to go ahead and cut them in half. It processes a little bit easier, even on larger ones. But also, there's a thing called core rot in apples where it'll look perfectly fine. Then when you cut it in the middle, you'll actually see the rot in the middle of the apple. And then with the carrots, I'm going to cut off the very end. And with beets, I'll go ahead and cut the tops and bottoms off because those are really difficult to process as well. So from there, I got my produce cut. It's cold and it's ready to juice. There's certain things when you're actually grinding the product, I like to make sure I mix the produce as best I can as I'm processing it. And you'll see there will actually be a lot less separation than if I just went ahead and did the carrots first, then went into the apples, then the pear. Try to mix it up as best you can, and you'll get a better result as well.
So I just want to add something about the mixing. So we've actually done testing data where we juice everything separately and juice the recipes mixed. You actually get more juice when you mix everything because it's important to get like a nice texture in the grind. And some ingredients are softer and slimier than others. And so but what you want is something kind of in the middle. Like it's like what I call the mushy spectrum, where you have the mushy fruit on one side and the dry fruit like leafy greens all the way on the other, and then everything in the middle. You want to kind of get it near the middle. So if you're using lots of soft things like pineapple and citrus, you want to add some things from the drier side like apples or cucumbers or greens or something to try to get it kind of in the middle, because you actually get a few percent more juice out of the same recipe.
And one thing to think about too is when you're costing the recipes, if I was doing everything individually, I would need to have individual yields on every single product I use. So if I juice and then mix that product together, it's going to be extremely precise, but you're sacrificing on the end result with the separation. And when you're doing larger batches of production, the consistency will be there. You know, if you're doing individual, like one juice bottle at a time or made to order, it's a little more difficult to be extremely consistent. But the larger batches, you'll have the consistency and not need to worry about doing everything individually and then mixing the juices at the end. And a lot of products will start oxidizing right away. Like if you did any herbs, fine herbs, or apples, it will start oxidizing right away unless it has a little bit of citrus in there.
Ari, can we pause for 1 second? Emily in chat here has an issue where She says that sometimes the yield will come out less than it has been in the past. She's using an X1. What kind of advice could you give on maybe troubleshooting why the yield might be less?
Yeah. So the main reason I'm going through the reasoning behind every of the basic steps is really to be able to troubleshoot. And that's the key. If something changes, there's a lot of things to be able to troubleshoot and kind of detect what the issue is going on. So if you were using the X1, some of the most common ones could be is either the produce has adjusted. Produce is very seasonal. So if you're doing everything in large batches, you'll actually see when things are going in and out of season, the yields are going to be slightly less or slightly more. So you can adjust that gradually as it goes. It could be something where your blades are a little bit dull. So it's actually not grinding it fine enough to be able to extract enough juice. So what I would recommend is send me an email after, or just kind of go through and see what might has changed and then start investigating that list, but definitely start with produce first and see if you're getting it from your purveyor sourcing it from different areas, or if it's changed anything recently. Check out the blade, and then we'll go through the pressing a little bit, and that could be a factor as well. So
May I?
Yes, please.
Also, make sure that you're doing your monthly maintenance on your X1. Those press plates, you want to make sure that when they're closing all the way, that you have a nice parallel plate. If one looks a little off, make sure that you're tightening those bolts. That was a big thing for us that caused a little bit less of a yield. And then ripeness of produce. Right now we have one that has pear in it. Last batch, it was really unripe pear, nice and green Bartlett. The yield was a lot higher. We got really ripe pear this week. And we're also doing it with cranberry, pomegranate. The yield was about 34 ounces less than last week due to just the simple ripeness of the produce.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you want it to be ripe, but not overly ripe, right? That's kind of what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Then you get more into the mushy end of the spectrum, and you get less juice out of super mushy produce because it kind of bonds the liquid more, and as you press, it just kind of pushes up instead of the juice coming out. So that's why you want that like nice consistency.
A good determining factor on if it's a produce or if it's something going on with the process is checking the pulp. Okay, the pulp should be dry on all your recipes. So if it's a little moist, it's something to do with your process. If the pulp is dry after you're done processing, it most likely is a produce, and we can kind of adjust with certain varieties of items. Good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and take my produce and start processing. A couple key elements during this grinding portion. If you have like the X1, you want to make sure you have sharp blades. It's kind of tough to determine when they become dull. It's always good to have a spare on hand and kind of put that on every once in a while to go and check and see if that's actually a factor in this. But if it's a dull blade, you'll get less yield, but also the vibrancy of the juice will be affected. When I'm grinding the produce, I don't want to do it too aggressive as well. So I don't want to be jamming the produce into the machine. If it's having problems processing on any of the units, you want to go ahead and do light taps instead of constant pressure. So I'm mixing a produce and I'm gently processing.
All right, while you're grinding, I'm going to mute you and take another question here. So Tammy has a question about separation of juice. Kiley or Emry, have you guys dealt with the issue where your juices are separating? Do you have any tips?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely if you are not getting that juice cold, like Chef Ari was saying, I would suggest making sure that you're prepping the night before so that you start with cold produce. And then say I have 2 presses, say we're doing 50 bottles instead of 25. We work with 13-ounce glass bottles. So sometimes we have to split those batches into 2 separate presses. In between those two presses, also making sure that you're getting your first batch in the refrigerator while you press your second batch. I've seen some people online keeping out the juice while they're working on that second batch, and then trying not to let it hang out in your fridge for a long time. I would actively have someone also in the kitchen with you bottling, whether it's the front that needs to come back to bottle, or also having prep in the back. Get it closed in the refrigerator if you need to put it on an ice bath. But typically we've seen the separation will come from a temperature issue, with the juice kind of getting a higher temperature and then coming back down, or a dull blade.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I
made
would
some
agree. I
content
feel like
on. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
I agree with you, Emry, about all of that, like with the temperature and stuff. And we have like chilling paddles that we'll use. And one thing I had noticed is we experimented with like a blueberry recipe, and it seemed like some of those mushier fruits, that was one that separated for us fairly, not a ton, but I would say it separated more than any of our other ones do. But definitely when we switched blades too, I noticed a big difference.
Those blades,
Yeah.
just order 10 of
Mhm.
them and just have them downstairs and change it every month if you
Yes.
have to. It's worth it.
Well, you
I
just
have a
think like,
tip.
is
I have
my
a
blade
tip for the
dull?
blades. Yeah, like if you notice you or your staff are pushing really hard on the produce to get it to go through, then that's when you know you need to replace the blade, because it should go through pretty easy. Like you shouldn't have to put much pressure on it. And that goes for any of our machines. And if you're really struggling and you see them like like trying to push this stuff through, then you change the blade. Their eyes will light up. They're like, "Whoa, it's so easy." Because if you
Mhm.
think about, if you're putting a lot of pressure and pushing the fruit, you're basically bruising it, which is not going to give you a good juice. And then, yeah, the time and temperature abuse, shelf life. You want to start with cold produce, process the juice quickly, and get it back in the refrigerator. That's going to make the biggest difference for the color of your juice and the separation. And then also, I think Ari's going to talk about pressing later, but not pressing too quickly. The X1 has an option where you can turn up the press speed and press really fast. That 100% leads to more separation. So you want to press slowly, which will give you higher yield and less separation. And you want to use cold produce and a sharp blade, and I think you'll probably see some results.
Yeah. So I finished grinding and pressing on this, and you'll notice I took my gloves off. That's kind of a good habit that I like to get into, because a lot of times I'll have my gloves on, pushing in the produce. I get uh, the produce on my hands, and I'll start touching the machine. So it's kind of nice to go ahead, and once I'm finished with ready to eat produce through the machine, I'll take my gloves off so I'm not touching it with a sticky glove. Uh, Pressing is extremely important, and that directly affects the quality of juice tremendously. So with the smaller units, you don't really have to worry about it because it's kind of set for optimal speed. But with like the X1, what I always tell people is take your time with that process, because that directly affects the separation of juice. You could notice it a lot easier with your green juice blends. If there's an issue with pressing, you'll notice it with the green juices before everything else. Because with like this, you won't notice because it's the orange flavor so strong, or a beet juice. But with the green juice, you'll notice that a lot quicker. So it might be happening with other juices, but with a green juice, you'll notice it quickly. So with the X1, what I always tell people to is set the speed as slow and gradual, like kind of like this speed, but you want to control it as it's closing with that knob, the retract, the neutral, and the forward lever. And basically, you want the juice to flow from the bottom of the bag. If it's going through the sides of the bag, then put it in neutral, let the juice catch up, and then put it back into forward once it's caught up. So I always tell people you want the streams of juice basically to look like, if you make espresso, kind of they say like a mouse's tail. That's how you want it coming out of the press bag. You don't want juice coming out of the sides, because then you're pressing too quickly, and that'll lead to quicker separation and shorter shelf life.
Yeah, that also goes for X1 Mini. There's two speeds on there, single and batch. Single is meant for you're doing a single serving of juice because the press is only a couple inches full. So that's why you put that speed on there. But I have seen a lot of customers, you walk in and they're just pressing all their batches using the faster speed, which, I mean, it's going to give you separation, it's going to break bags, and it's just not ideal. So if you should always press slowly when you can. I mean, some of our biggest customers that have the big industrial machines, they'll press over like 30 or 40 minutes because they just press really slow and they want every drop of juice out. Now, that's not practical for a juice bar, but definitely if you have your X1 speed turned all the way up, I'd say turn it down.
So I have my juice here. I took a temperature of it, and it's actually 45 degrees, which is great. So you're allowed to, you have a 4-hour window to get your juice down below 41 degrees, okay, before you have to toss it. But you should, and realistically, be able to get that down below 41 degrees within an hour. The quicker you do that, the higher quality juice you'll end up with and actually get a little bit longer shelf life. So the longer this is in the temperature danger zone, the shorter the shelf life. So with that in mind, I would definitely chill this down below its 41 degrees. If I'm doing batches, I want to make sure all the juice ends up in one container. That's for consistency purposes. So if I was chilling a large batch and I got juice going in and out, I would recommend having a large container that would fit all that juice into it, and then use like a chill stick, one of those magic wands where they're filled with water. It's made out of like the water cooler material, and you'll freeze that. So it's like an ice cube in the juice, but it's not diluting it. That's very important to get it below 41 degrees before you actually bottle it. Because if it's slightly higher, you bottle it. It's kind of like putting a hot container into a fridge. That center area will not chill down for much longer, and most likely will take longer than 4 hours to chill. One tip I would recommend, especially if you're doing glass bottles, is to chill your bottles before you actually fill them up with the juice, because that will help out keeping it below that temperature danger zone. Not so much with plastic, but I would recommend trying to get in a habit or implement it if you can. Kind of have it for your production, where the prep work the night before, your employees will actually, if you're labeling them yourself, actually label all the bottles and then store that in the cooler. So your juicer comes in the next day, he has all his juice bottles cool, ready to go, and he has his produce cool, and he could jump right into juicing. Because the expiration date on juice, the health department doesn't care, inspection agency, it's at midnight no matter what. So you want to make it so your juicer can jump right in the morning and go directly into juicing. And that really extends the shelf life of your product. The longer you could have it on your shelf, the better it is for you. So that's very important as well. From there, I'll just go ahead and bottle the juice, and I'm ready to go.
So if your lids are popping, if you have glass bottles and you notice a good key for that temperature, if when you open the bottle, it has a slight pop to it, your juice is it's not cold enough when you're bottling it. So that's a good key. I noticed that. I'm like, why is this batch? Why are all these popping? And I went to our juice tech and they said, oh, this, and I said, oh, okay. So it was warm before it got bottled. So
that's a good point, because those, like the Snapple bottle lids that have the little button that pops up when you open them,
yeah,
like the iced tea and stuff. That's because they fill those hot, and that sucks the lid down.
Yeah,
so that's a really good point. Yeah.
we get a lot of questions too about how high you fill the juice. Like if you want it overflowing to remove as much air as possible from the bottle of juice. Personally, I haven't seen a difference. I know there's tons of people that'll argue with me on that, but those large processing facilities, they have really expensive equipment that pumps gas in there to actually remove the oxygen. And I don't know, what's your guys' take on that? I haven't found too big a difference.
I see a big difference, yeah. On stuff that's really oxidized, so apples, pears, things like your carrots, I don't think you notice as much. It kind of goes hand in hand with the separation, you'll notice more on your greens. I don't tend to see it, but we do fill ours at Maui Juice Co. straight to the top.
Awesome. You get any spillage, or you guys are professionals now?
You know, they're pretty good. I will say they've got the whole. I'll have to show y'all one day their little process. They've got it down.
If you do fill them all the way up to the top, be sure you wipe your bottles down.
Yeah.
So that they're not sticky. Okay.
Sorry, Kylie. I think you're muted. I don't know why.
Oh,
I just unmuted you now.
am I
But it
still
looked like
okay?
You're trying to say something.
Yeah, my husband came in. He's weighing produce and he had questions. So, and see, I'm kind of with Ari. I've done it both ways. I mean, we fill them full, but we haven't worried about like getting it to the brim. And because sometimes I feel like you push the lid down and then it spews out it's just a mess. So I don't know. We haven't really noticed a huge difference. I mean, we fill them full, but I guess maybe not to the brim. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's not major. It is slight. It is like for the connoisseurs, they're like, that looks just like a tenth possibly lower. But no, I mean, Goodnature obviously makes a fantastic product. Even if you filled it halfway, it would be fine. But yeah, I think it's.
I know there's a lot of people that talk about, the oxygen exposed to the juice will affect the nutrients. That's kind of difficult to test, but I'd say the quality, it has no change on it for sure. I mean, it might be from certain aspects of the nutrients. People might be worried about it, but it's my opinion. So
we had one question about changing the blades. Does that apply to X1 Mini? Not as much. The X1 Mini blade doesn't have to be as sharp. It's a different style of cutter, but it still does need to be replaced occasionally. It's just called the part on the website is called the Lopper, Lopper. It's just like a little metal piece. You can just order that piece. You don't have to order the whole round blade disc. So you can just get that one little piece.
And you just don't push that produce. You don't want to
question.
jam it. You want to be really gentle on the X1 Mini. We have the X1 Mini as well that we'll do for cleanses if we need to. You really do not want to be pounding that produce. You're better off just letting the grinder take it. It does take a little bit longer, but it is in your best interest to not push it to feel like maybe the blade is not sharp. We never changed ours in 3 years. We never changed the Lopper.
Yeah.
For the Mini.
Well, it might be time to change. But
light taps. Light taps are better than constant pressure.
We got it sharpened from a local sharpener. He just kind of like shaved to make it a little bit pointier. So we get it like locally. We have a craftsman here that does our local sharpening on some parts. So we did get it sharpened a few times, but not to like dilute the integrity of the actual part.
Right. Okay, we've got a question about freezing. This has been coming up a lot in the Facebook group. Freezing juice, shipping frozen juice, etc. What are your thoughts on freezing juice, Ari?
Well, I wouldn't do it. So I would. There's a couple things that are going on when you freeze juice. It's expanding when it's freezing, and then when you thaw it, it's rupturing the cellular structure of the juice. So that's why if you freeze a juice and then thaw it and drink it, it'll taste almost diluted. So if I was going to freeze it, I would kind of try to counteract that, making it a little bit more pungent if possible. But you'll see it tastes diluted and it'll separate almost instantly. So once you juice, this product is still pretty fragile. So if you take a juice that is perfect like this or in great condition, it's not separating or anything, and I take this and I put it into a blender, pulse it really high, and then bottle it, it'll almost separate right away. So this is still a fragile product in that bottle. You could shake it, it's fine. That's not going to do too much damage, but not too vigorously, and when you freeze that product, it's just, you want to think about the end result. Okay, it's going to taste a little diluted. The only time that I would probably freeze juice is if I was selling like a large amount of pure celery juice. Okay. If someone's doing like a juice cleanse and they want 30 bottles of frozen celery, I would do that because you're not drinking it for the flavor or care about the visuals. You're just drinking 16 ounces in the morning when you first get up, or 8 ounce, however much you're drinking. So that's a one kind of option I would probably go with is freeze celery juice, but everything else I wouldn't freeze. And I wouldn't ship it either because there's no way to really truly guarantee that it's out of the temperature change zone for 4 hours. If there's a way to guarantee that, and you could ask for the approval through the FDA because you're wholesaling it and shipping it wherever you're shipping it, then go ahead. But it's kind of difficult because shipping overnight express delivery is extremely expensive. The packaging is expensive. I don't really see how it's too viable. Some people do it. It works for them, but that's just my opinion on it.
How about you, Kylie? Have you sold frozen juice?
No, we haven't. The only time we've done frozen is if I made too much and I froze it into like popsicles for my kids or something. But no, we don't sell any frozen juices. Me personally, I want to make sure, kind of to touch on what Ari said, that it's like a quality control thing. I just don't think that frozen is the best representation of my product. So it's just personally something that I choose not to do.
Yeah. If the consumer wants to freeze it, they can. It definitely
Yeah.
keeps the nutrients in there, but just let them know that that's not going to taste exactly how we intended to produce that juice.
I've also seen so many boxes of those like meal order kits just sitting on people's porches for like 3 days. And it just worries me that you'd
Gross.
ship someone juice and it just sits on their porch, and because they're traveling or whatever, and then they open it and they complain that it's separated, or they drink it and they get sick or something. I don't know.
I mean, there is a way to kind of possibly think about it. Is they have those, the stickers that you could put on that kind of trip if it hits a certain temperature. If I was shipping juice, I would check that out and see if you could find one that would actually, the stickers that'll change colors if it hits a certain temperature, and if it hits over 41 degrees, that it might turn red or whatever color. That might be something, but I would definitely consider the safety of the product once that person receives it. It's really important.
I would consider freezing juice too to be like your last resort. And I think that there's a lot of other steps that you can take within the company before you reach like, all right, I'm going to start just freezing juice and selling it. How's your loyalty program? What are you doing bulk orders? Are you trying to reach out to businesses close to you to do like luncheons? So I think freezing is more from a profit standpoint. Who doesn't want their juice to last for 30 days? But realistically, I think that yeah, it definitely sacrifices the integrity of the juice. And there's a lot of other steps that you can take in the company to kind of like maybe push the juice a little bit more so that you don't necessarily have to freeze it. We don't even ever have to worry about freezing it. Our juice doesn't last in the refrigerator probably for about 3 days tops.
Now, there's certain items. All produce is different, and it's important to kind of experiment and find out what works perfect for your operation. Like we were talking about these steps, you're not going to be able to implement all these in most cases. You might be doing made to order juice or not large enough batches or don't have the employees to be able to do that. There's certain produce items that will work when you freeze it too, in particular berries. So berries in general, if you cold press them, the yield is not that great. But if you actually freeze it and then thaw it slightly and then process it as you go, you'll actually get a much higher yield. So that's kind of a good way to be able to incorporate certain berries in your juice, but also a great way to eliminate a lot of waste in case you have like you're making bowls with fresh strawberries, blueberries. As soon as they're about to go or expire, you pop them in the freezer when you get a large amount. then you could slightly thaw them and then juice it. So it's not always black and white. You know, you always want to kind of think what will work perfect for your operation.
We've got a question about shelf life, recommended days. So, I mean, my thoughts on shelf life is you can, if you're following the advice, you're monitoring the temperature of everything, you're using cold produce, getting it back in the fridge, and your recipe is somewhat acidic, like it has apples in it or lemons or something that's more on the acidic side, I think you can safely say, you know, up to 5 days. It could go bad sooner if something happens, but I think up to 5 days. Anybody have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're allowed 7 days because it's considered a prepared food. I recommend the 4 to 5 day shelf life because after that time, the color and flavor on most juices will begin to start changing. So you never know. I like to keep it consistent across the board, and you never know if someone's going to buy like 5 juices and then keep 2 of them in a fridge for 2 or 3 days. So I like to keep it 4 to 5 day shelf life across the board. Run your own tests. There's certain ways to be able to get an extended shelf life for, you know, like flavored waters that is mostly water, a little bit of citrus in there. And then you talk to the local health inspector. If you get a certain pH, below a certain pH, you could get a variance on that product and get it up to 14 days. But you want to get the approval through them first.
I mean, at home, I've drank some pretty old juice because I find it in the fridge, and it's just kind of like it looks kind of gross, but let me smell it. I'm like, it smells fine, and I'll drink it. But I wouldn't sell that to somebody. You know,
Yeah.
I'm kind of taking the risk on myself at that point. But I don't know, Emry and Kiley, how many days do you mark your juices for?
Yeah, I'm
We
five.
do-
After you, Kiley.
Oh, go ahead.
We do 5 days for our, we call them shoots and roots. So our greens and our roots, they're typically vegetable based. They've got a higher pH. We will do 5 days on our fruits, which typically are going to have a lower pH. They're a little bit more acidic. Their bases are pineapple, orange, lemon, tangelo. We do those for 6 days. And then our shots, which are based in lemon, those are 7 days. So none of our products are more than 7 days. Again, that's with making sure that that produce is super cold when you juice it and getting it in the fridge right away. We've had greens that on their 3rd day, we've had to pull them if they don't look and taste like up to par, up to standard. So yeah, a lot of variations, but we do not do anything over 7 days, but typically 5 and 6.
So we're right there with you. We do like our greens and stuff, we do 5, and then everything else we do 7, except we do have some enhanced waters. And those we do, I think 10 days on those is what we have. But it's primarily, yeah, it's water, and then usually either lemon juice, lime juice. But yeah, otherwise, same thing.
I've had our juice up to 30 days, and like Charlie, I'm like, you know, this doesn't taste bad. I'm actually very impressed.
Yeah.
Maker makes a damn good juicer for you to drink it 30 days. We'll give it the good old sniff test. Maybe it doesn't have the right lid on it. But yeah,
Right.
let me sell it.
And
No,
we
I
always
mean-
joke that like it's a treat when we actually get like fresh juice, because it's usually like we're the ones taking home the stuff that's like, oh, this expires tonight. So it's like when you get a fresh one, it's a treat as the owner.
Yeah, no, totally. I think there's definitely a more vibrant when it's real fresh, you know. You can sort of taste like the individual flavors in it and everything. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I mean, it is very apparent. Like when a recipe is acidic, like one of my favorite recipes is just apple, lemon, ginger, right? Because you can make it spicy with extra ginger and lemon, or you can make it more on the cider side. But that recipe is pretty acidic because lemons are very acidic and apples are somewhat on the acidic side of the spectrum. And that juice lasts forever. Like I can drink it, you know, 7 or 10 days later. But but I wouldn't put it on a shelf in a store and sell it that late, you know. Like Ari said, I think the regulation is 7 days.
Yeah, I think the pH was like below 3.5, and then it kind of puts it in a different category, which is not really that acidic. It's kind of like almost as acidic as like a lemonade, you know, a little bit less acidic than that. So anything below that is actually safe for much longer. But yeah, if you're keeping it longer, just make sure you get the approval.
Yep. Jordan Rosendale's has comments here that said they are actually very successful selling frozen juice. People drive in and buy a big batch of it and take it home and freeze it. Yeah, I mean, that's like a use case where I think it makes sense. If people are, you know, they don't have a juice bar in their area and they want to stock up and take it home, I think it makes sense. But I've definitely noticed a difference on some recipes when I thought it definitely separates. I've noticed it on green juices especially, but then apple cider, I haven't really noticed a difference. I think it freezes very well. So I think if you are going to be selling frozen juice, you should probably do your own testing on your recipes and see which ones thaw well and which ones don't. And then, as Jordan says, it can be a good business if that's what customers want.
Yeah,
And it would have to be in plastic bottles for companies that are really keen to glass. Just make sure you would obviously do not want to freeze your glass bottle. It will explode. So you would need to source and check out some plastic bottles before making that jump.
Can you freeze it in glass if you just leave space in it for it to expand?
We have played with it. Ours always breaks. I think maybe just don't put it close to the back of the freezer. Maybe put it in the door of the freezer. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it breaks. I don't want that liability, but yeah, I think that's a mixed thought for sure.
Right.
I don't know how people ship frozen juice. I mean, I've shipped frozen samples of juice to clients, and I mean, 3 states over, overnight shipping is crazy. It's like $50 at least, you know, and that's like not too much juice. I can't imagine a whole juice cleanse unless you get like a business account and it's affordable, and the packaging, it's tough. But yeah, certain recipes work for freezing a little better than the others. Same thing, like concept for when people further process their stuff with like HTST or heat or HPP with pressure. Like cider works great with heat, correct? And then if you do a green juice through heat, it's not
ruins it.
Yeah. So
yeah, we've experimented with that before. Like if you you can heat up like a apple cider with a little espresso wand from an espresso machine in your juice bar if you want to serve like a warm drink. But then we tried it on a green recipe with kale on it, and I was like, whoa, this is awful. It kind of like cooks it, and it's just not good. It's really not good.
It's kind of like when I leave my juice in my truck and I'm like, oh, I'm not wasting this. I'm going to drink it. And it's been all day and it's nice and hot. And I'm like, yum.
If your plastic bottles start bowing out, it's not a good sign too. So.
Right. No, we're glass here, Chef Ari. At least I got a little bit. I'm like, but yeah.
So we've had a couple requests in the chat for recipe calculator. Ari and I do have a very robust recipe calculator. It does require that you know your cost of produce, which some people, it seems like they struggle with, but I think it needs a little training. It's a big spreadsheet, but it combines all of your recipes and tells you how much stuff to order, how much it's going to cost, what your profit margin is. We've been using it with our consulting clients, and I'd be happy to share it, but I do think it needs a little training. So maybe on the next episode, we could go through that, Ari.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'd be a good one.
That thing is a lifesaver. It's like my one tab that I never close on my laptop. Like it's that thing like crazy. It's wonderful.
That's great. I'm glad you've been using it.
I might have messed up some formulas though, so I might need help with it.
Yeah. I know. I mean,
don't do what I did. Read the instructions first before you start doing stuff.
I mean, my dream is to turn that into software, so you just like type in the numbers and you don't have to deal with spreadsheets. But that's just something that's been on my mind for years. And I've never gotten
Goodnature
around to it.
app recipe calculator.
Yeah, exactly.
$8.99 a month.
then
There
I
you
was thinking,
go.
then I was thinking we could build in Ari's juicing companion data into it as AI. So like when you start typing recipes, Ari's little face comes up. It's like, you should try mixing that with raspberries or something.
I'm sure that'll be a huge selling point. My face just
Don't-
popping
Please
up
do
there.
Don't
that.
Don't forget to keep your juice cold.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be like the little.
That would be
remember,
awesome.
remember Clippy from Microsoft
Oh
Word?
yes. Oh yes.
Be little Chef Ari AI. Little, chef code.
But costing is so important though, and it's so easy to overthink it. Like when you try to figure out costing on your own, it's like so easy to kind of go down these rabbit holes and figure out the yield of carrots and ginger and lemon, and it's so easy to overcomplicate it. And you need to make it simple. If your costing is simple, you'll actually do it. So if you have something complicated that takes like 20 minutes to cost out your recipes, you'll be good for a couple months, and then you'll kind of just start ignoring it when you need to stay on top of that stuff every week.
Someone asking about scale recommendations. So I just pulled mine out. This is a commercial scale. The brand is called Escali, ESCALI. It's a NSF certified scale, so you can use this in a business. It has a nice big platform, so you can load like a whole, 10-pound bin of produce on it if you have to. And also a feature, very important, it doesn't turn itself off. There are a lot of very annoying scales where if you don't use them for 5 minutes, they like turn themselves off. So then you come back to it, you have to take the thing off, put the empty one on, re-tear it so it goes back to 0, and then load it back on. So I would say just commercial scale that doesn't have an auto turn off feature.
Is a game changer because you're going to get distracted when you're weighing produce.
Yeah, exactly.
I like one that goes up to like 40 pounds.
Yeah.
Something that could be either plugged in or use batteries. And I like using a smaller one as well for like blenders or small produce. So this is Scali as well. This is, I think it's called the Pruno model. So this is great to have for like your smoothie line or testing small recipes or shots to order.
Then someone asked about knives. Any knife recommendations? I know, Ari, your famous recommendation is just those really cheap ones, right? Those cheap commercial knives.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, you're not doing any fancy knife cut work. You're going to have a lot of employees in and out, taking the knives, abusing them. Keep your knives at home, or I prefer to get like cheap $10, $20 set of chef's knife or paring knives from like Amazon or restaurant store, and just use one of those pull through sharpeners so that you're not worrying about shaving off the metal or abusing the knife. You just pull it through, clean the blade. It's nice and sharp consistently, and you don't have to worry about employees dropping it, mishandling it. So yeah,
but I would say a sharp knife is very important, especially if you're using it to like cut around and peel citrus and cut produce and cut through pineapple and stuff. I've actually found dull knives to be a little dangerous because you have to push really hard to do what you're trying to do, and then it can slip and you can cut yourself. So just make sure you're using a sharp knife. All right, so we're running up on an hour here, so we can take. Let me just see if there are any other questions. I know somebody asked earlier about marketing. I don't think we're gonna have time to get into that. That's like a whole nother, whole nother topic. So we'll save that for a future episode. But Tammy's asking about how do you test acidity? Ari, do you recommend testing acidity, or do you not worry about that?
If you have time, I would. But you can buy a pH tester online, Amazon. I don't have a recommendation for a great one. I've always bought, I've gone through about 4 or 5 just because I lose it all the time. So that's why I kind of go a little cheaper, like $20 for it. But it does a job. Basically, you can go ahead and test the pH of the juice. It helps with consistency of product so that you know what certain pH for your particular juice blend, and you can kind of consistently hit that. I wouldn't worry about it from like a shelf life standpoint unless I'm doing that extended shelf life. But from a consistency standpoint, it works great. Just like you can kind of hit in that range more often. And lab testing is really easy with pH as well. I think that's actually the cheapest test you could do. Companies like, there's lots of certified laboratories all over, but you could overnight a sample, they could test the pH. I think it's like 15 or 20 bucks. So if you are doing that variance and you need to have a certain pH for that extended shelf life, you're going to need to do quarterly pH test on your juices in-house, but also send quarterly to a lab to actually get an official result from the lab.
Beacon Point Lab, BEA, Beacon Point Lab. They did ours. They're great, quick, kind. I think that they're based out of California.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much. So nice to see everybody. We had people joining from Kenya and Canada and all over the US, and it's really awesome. Thank you, Emry and Kiley, for joining today, offering us your expertise. How do people, Emry, how do people follow you on social media?
Yes, Maui Juice Co. We are on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We have a social media manager that posts daily about stuff in-house. We have our new website relaunching with online ordering, which our customers are excited about. But you can always feel free to message us there. I answer a lot of questions for small juice bars too. I hop on there probably about once a week, and Aaron flags those, those messages. So I'll message you too.
Great. And Kiley, how about you?
So our social media is, so for the juicery, it's Jokir Juicery. It's Jokir. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Probably need to step up our game a little bit to keep up with Emry on our posting. But it's just me right now. So
yeah, I don't do it.
We got a slim crew. So, but I like it that way right now. So, but yeah, definitely. I think learning from other juice bars and not being afraid to ask questions. I mean, I joke when I email Ari, and it's me again. And, I think just not being afraid to reach out and ask questions has been one of the most helpful things for me too, is just not being bashful about asking even the dumb questions, because I knew nothing about this industry when I started. So I've asked lots of questions.
And you can reach Ari at Chef Ari on Instagram, right?
I think it's Chef Ari Sexner on there.
Okay, Chef Ari Sexner.
Or just call it
Instagram. And then if anyone wants to reach out to me, I manage Goodnature's social media account. So just reach out to Goodnature Pro on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I think we're on TikTok, but I'm not on there very much. Don't message me on TikTok. But anywhere else, leave a comment on the video. I replied all the comments on YouTube. Nice, sweetie. And yeah, so, and if you're not on the email list and you want to get notified of upcoming webinars, head over to goodnature.com/levelup, one word, and you can sign up there. You'll get notified. I think the 2 episodes in my mind I want to do coming up are going to be calculating your cost of goods and profitability using our calculator, and one on marketing and promotion and growing your business. So if you want to get notified, head over. I'll type it in the chat here, goodnature.com/levelup. Thank you so much. See everybody soon. Peace out.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
All right. See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
That was awesome.